and booted off Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week, so we'll see how this goes. All right, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today. This is our week 2 Improve Your Intake Snack Time recipe demonstration. So for Improve Your Intake, we're focusing on ways to get lots of fiber-rich foods into our usual regular routines. So we're going to be talking this week about beans. It's Beans Week, and we are going to show we're going to see some beans show up in a very unusual way this week, somewhere we don't usually see beans. We're going to be making chocolate hummus. Has anybody ever tried chocolate hummus? This is a recipe that's been kicking around on the internet for a couple of years. It's even in the store. Jen's tried it. That's awesome. So it's out there in the world. There's recipes, there's stuff in the store, but also it's totally crazy, right? So if you haven't tried it, you might think I'm totally off my rocker now. Chickpeas and chocolate, that's weird. But we're going to try it out, and tasting is believing. So before we get started, I do want to talk a little bit about the class of food this falls into. So a chocolate hummus is going to fall into the category of a healthy dessert. And I want to just take a little bit of time to clear the air on what a healthy dessert is. So before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about why we're focusing on snacks for this demonstration series. With the goal of increasing our fiber during this challenge, we want to make sure that we're increasing our fiber really slowly and gradually. And one way to do that is to just start off with adding it in our snacks. We talked about that a little bit last week. You're going to feel better if you increase your fiber gradually over time. Another reason that we're focusing on adding fiber to our snacks is that's what's going to help us to stay satisfied for longer and get more energy out of the snack. So it's going to help the snack to go just a little bit further in our day. So that brings us back to the idea of a healthy dessert. And I just want to put out there that just because healthy desserts exist out there in the world doesn't mean that we have to choose a healthy dessert 100% of the time. So for example, if it was my birthday and somebody said, "Happy birthday, Hope, I made you a nice bowl of chocolate hummus," I would say, thanks, but where's the birthday cake? If it's my birthday, I'm going to choose a real cake. Because cake is there to be a celebration, to be an enjoyment, and to help us have something to bond over. It's a tradition. It's got an important function in our society. Versus another scenario. So it's not my birthday. Today, thanks, Jen. So today, say I am typing away on my computer, it hits 3 o'clock, and I start to get hungry, and I start to get grumpy and tired, and gosh darn it, I want something sweet. If I have a piece of birthday cake at 3 o'clock in the afternoon during my workday, my blood sugar is going to spike. I'm going to be wired for what feels like 3 minutes, and then it's going to crash. I'm going to want to take a nap, and I'm going to have so much trouble getting my work done for the rest of the day. So to kind of hit that balance of something that's going to give us the energy and the nutrients to fuel our day to keep going, but still kind of satisfy that need for a sweet treat, we're going to try this healthy dessert. So there's a place and a function for all these different types of desserts. So that's really just something that I want to make clear. All right, so you might be wondering, what are the healthy nutrients that we're looking for in this dessert? And for this particular recipe, it's going to be protein and fiber. Those are the things that are going to slow down how we digest this food and make it so that this energy can sustain us for the rest of our day. And we're going to get that in the form of chickpeas. So the chickpeas are going to be giving us that fiber and that protein that's going to take this dessert from just a bowl of frosting to an actual nutritious snack. So we're going to start off by putting these chickpeas into the food processor. I'm doing this in a food processor, but if you don't have a food processor, you can easily do this in a blender. It will work. You'll just have to scrape it out around the blades a little bit. Thank you for dropping that recipe in the chat, Sophie. So if you don't have access to that, it's there, and then it's also going to be posted on our social media and blogs. All right, so we got our chickpeas in there. Chickpeas are a great source of fiber. They also have some protein. I do want to make a note, though, chickpeas don't have quite as much protein as we might think. So if you're using chickpeas as your main source of protein for that meal, and you wanted to get about 20 grams, usually for a meal for most people is a good thing to shoot for as far as protein. Individualized, of course, but that's a good ballpark for lots of people. If you wanted to get 20 grams of protein out of chickpeas, you'd have to eat this entire can. I personally think that would be too much. So if I was putting some chickpeas on a salad for protein, I might also add a little bit of eggs or a little bit of cheese. Sophie's asking if she can substitute another bean for more protein. I haven't tried it, but I don't see why not. I would try maybe black beans or cannellini beans or something like that if you wanted to try a different bean if you don't want to use chickpeas. And those might have slightly a little bit more protein than a garbanzo bean. So that's in there, it's ready to go. And since this is a snack, we don't really need it to have a whole meal's worth of protein in it, right? It's gonna have more than your bowl of frosting, but it's not necessarily going to be a ton. All right, so our next ingredient is nut butter. And you can use whatever type of nut butter you want. You can use peanut butter or almond butter, cashew butter, tahini, sun butter, no matter what you have in your fridge. I'm using almond butter because I just went to Costco and that's what I have right now. And we're going to use a 1/3 cup of that. So it's going right in with our chickpeas, 1/3 cup of almond butter. Right in there. This one's nice and drippy. This is going to add some healthy fats and some more protein. So the unsaturated fats in nut butter are a little bit more healthy for your heart than the types of fats you would get in your birthday cake. So birthday cake's going to have probably some butter and some eggs, and that's going to give you some saturated fat, which is not as heart healthy. But again, it doesn't mean that we should never eat birthday cake. Okay, our next ingredient is cocoa powder. Cocoa powder, I actually just learned this by reading the side of the package. Cocoa powder is pretty high in fiber, surprisingly. We don't usually eat enough of this in one sitting for it to count as a good source of fiber, because you're not going to sit down and eat a whole bowl of it. It's very intense and kind of bitter. But it does actually add a kind of significant amount to this recipe, which surprised me. So we've got a 1/3 cup of that in there. And next, we're going to sweeten this. So I'm using maple syrup, but I do want to tell people that maple syrup, you can use honey, you can use whatever you want. Maple syrup and honey are going to be recognized by your body the same way any other type of sugar is going to be recognized. Sugar is sugar. Now, I hope I don't get fired for saying this, because I know that maple syrup runs through the veins of all Vermonters, but there aren't really any magical health properties that go along with maple syrup. Your body's going to recognize it as sugar. So doesn't mean that we shouldn't use it. It just means that you don't necessarily get to give a health halo to maple syrup the way some people like to. I know that's blasphemy here in Vermont. It's very important, but to our culture here, but it still is sugar. So this recipe calls for 1/3 of a cup. I want to make a note, if you are using a sweetened nut butter, you can just look at the side here and see if you have any sugar in there. Something like Jif or Peter Pan or Skippy peanut butter has sugar already added to it. So you'll want to reduce the amount of sugar that goes in here. And if you like, you can even start with less than what the recipe calls for, and then taste it and decide if it tastes good to you. I will say you probably are going to need to use a little bit more than you think you need to use, because that cocoa powder is really bitter and it does need sugar to help it taste like that chocolate that we know and love. But hopefully all the fiber that's in here is going to slow down how quickly your body digests and absorbs that sugar. So that will help us get out of that blood sugar crash later. That protein and fiber is going to slow down how quickly our body gets that sugar into our blood. All right, so I'm going to blend this up a little bit, and then we're going to add some more liquid. I'm just going to give it a little head start. Pretty thick. Almost looks like cookie dough. It looks very chocolatey. All right, next up is milk. Calls for a 1/4 cup of milk. And with this, you also will want to kind of add it and use your best judgment on how the consistency is looking. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I didn't have any milk in my fridge, so I just took a small scoop of yogurt, plain yogurt, put it in there, and then filled it up with water and stirred it around. It's a trick that seems to work for me for a lot of things when I only need a tiny bit of milk and don't want to buy a whole quart, or if I'm out. So I'm going to actually let this food processor go and pour it in while I'm blending. So depending on how it looks, you might want to add a little bit more. I could probably go for a little bit more. I'm going to scrape down the sides and then see how it looks. Well, that is thick. So this is where you would want to add maybe a little bit more, depending on, honestly, what's going on with the weather. If it's a humid day, you won't need as much. If it's kind of dry outside, you'll need more. I'm going to add a tiny splash of water and pretend that it's milk. That's what we want to see. So it's looking kind of like hummus, or actually, no, it looks like frosting. Let's be honest here. Okay, so next up, we have our last 3 ingredients. We're going to use a little bit of vanilla extract. It's going to help to deepen and enrich that flavor a little bit. I'm going to put in a teaspoon. If you don't have vanilla extract, you can leave it out. It's pretty expensive. Sometimes I like to use a little extra cinnamon, or even like a splash of cold coffee will work too, as far as enriching that flavor. We're going to use a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. That's going to just give it a nice little flavor to it. And a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So in this recipe, we don't want the salt to make it taste salty. We want the salt there to enhance the other flavors that are there. All right, now we're going to blend it up. Straight on the sides. So now the biggest question is, what are we going to dip into this? What ideas do people have? Feel free to unmute and let us know. Fruit, veggies, interesting. Do you drain and rinse the beans? Yes, that's a great point, Jen. Thank you for bringing that out. I did rinse the beans and drain them before I got on this video, so you wouldn't have to watch that. But thank you for reminding me to tell you. Yes, drain and rinse the beans. Pretzels, that sounds great. I would probably serve this with fruit or with pretzels. Let's get a bowl and look at it. It's like a thick frosting consistency. I have some strawberries in my fridge that I was going to eat this with. Nice and thick. All right, so who here thinks you might try this week? Anybody? Couple thumbs ups, that's exciting. I can see some things coming in the chat, but I can't quite read what they say. There we go, pretzels, pita chips. Some people have made it before, which is very exciting. Fruit, awesome. All right, so for the person who's gonna put their veggies in chocolate hummus, I'm curious, what combination are you thinking about?
So I've done that before, and
Really?
usually do that. Yeah. And usually when I do it, it's like a red pepper or something like that.
Oh,
Really good to me.
that's awesome. I've never tried that, but I am definitely intrigued.
You might want to try it someday. Now you've got that, you just got to go get some red peppers.
I might even have some. Red peppers are kind of sweet naturally, right? So I wonder, does it bring out the natural sweetness of the red peppers?
I think it does.
Very exciting. That's a great idea. I'm gonna have it with a different red thing, strawberries. And I do think I want to try the red peppers. That's very interesting. So here it is. Does anybody have any questions? Any other questions? Come over to where I can see the chat box. All right, looks like people have made it before. Very exciting. Well, thanks everybody for coming, and hopefully this will pick you up this afternoon to help you get through the last day of the week and give you that boost of energy and also hopefully a huge boost of happiness. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Hope.
Bye.